devil is a liar. The devil is a liar. Liar, liar, pants up. The devil is a liar. Never have we had this situation before. Never ever have we had this situation before. The devil is a liar. How? How is it when we're having these great conversations? For what reason did Instagram have to cut me off? For what reason? My reception was fine. My internet is paid for. For what reason? But we're not giving up. No way. We are not. Hold on. There's no way. This conversation will continue regardless. I don't understand. Since when? We've been having amazing conversation. Not today. We've been having
not today.
Bro, not to Chin. You know me, I don't fall for these tricks, bro. Yeah?
Not today. We will not.
They said this guy is consistently bringing gems. He's consistently bringing minerals straight from the motherland. I will continue. I don't care about all this nonsense, them sending their pseudonyms, whatever those names are, to be blocked. No. We will continue.
Okay, Eddie, we have time. We don't have time. We need
we'll keep going. We'll keep going.
People say,
bro. Yes.
I'm just gonna. Someone said that it cut off when I said it's not about the generation. I think
it's not about.
I was saying.
Not about us, it's about the
I was
generation.
saying whenever, and I'll tell you this, it will happen every day when you're back on the continent. People do not think like you. People do not see or have the vision you do. A lot of people are short-term thinkers. They do not see the long-term, and it's no fault of theirs. The system has forced them to think that way. They don't know if tomorrow will be, right? But we all know if we're going to uplift our people out of poverty, right? And I say poverty, I don't say it lightly. Wale said yesterday on his video, we are all suffering, all Black people all over the world. None of us, I don't care, the few of us who have money, is not money. If we all suffer, we're all suffering.
We're all suffering, facts.
But,
I agree.
But when you try to build and you try and do what's right, you will be challenged daily because they don't understand it. And what I was trying to say is, I'm grateful for friends like Wale. I'm grateful for friends like Lanre. I'm grateful for friends who I can turn to and they remind me I'm not crazy, right?
Yeah.
They remind you that, don't worry, they don't fucking get it, but don't worry, it's not for them. It's for their children.
Yes, sir.
Anytime you ever, if you're a builder, if you're a generational builder, if you want to build for generations and people don't get you, don't worry, they're not meant to get you. They don't understand it. Visionaries have never been understood by those that stand beside them because it's not for them. People that live today and they don't know if they're going to be alive tomorrow, you can't blame them for not thinking about tomorrow. And it's only a handful of us who have that privilege. And with that privilege comes huge responsibility.
Yes, sir.
And so that is why I do it. And it's not by I love what I do. I love bringing people together. I love music. I love the arts. I love business. I love solving problems. And I'll be honest with you, for me, it's not like, oh, I need to go and help people. The stuff we started doing, Giddy First Presents and My Giddy, that was in the last 2 years. It was initiated by Alex Duncan, who's Haitian American, who by right, we've given him Nigerian citizenship. But like every step of the way, things change, opportunities present themselves. You learn new things. How you react or how you adapt to those, I think, is what defines you. What we're doing today, we may not be doing in 2 years. Where I'm currently is at a point where I've realized that the power we have as a people is together. What's happened I also said that the way that you set me up for this Monday thing, this is why I had to drink. I almost rolled myself a joint because, and thank God there was Kirk Franklin on Versus last night, and I literally have spent the whole morning watching it. Bruh, I was angry when I woke up this morning. I went to sleep at 9 p.m. yesterday, and it's been like this the last 2 days. I had a production on Saturday. And I said, how am I going to keep this conversation with Eddie, clean and to the point, and not get riled up about where we are today as a people? And luckily, that little praise and worship session with Brother Kirk helped, because it is challenging. But it's not by, honestly, Eddie, I don't wake up thinking I want to, and I want to help people. I want to do this. I want to do better. I just, honestly, it comes to me, and these are things that I enjoy doing. They
Yeah,
fulfill
facts.
me. And I genuinely like, and I'll go back to the beginning of what I said, this life is not yours. It is, if you're in, if you're blessed with education, if you're blessed with wealth, if you're blessed with opportunities other people don't, I feel like you have a responsibility to at least try and allow them to have the same privilege. And if they
So
can't, yeah.
let me hear that. Try and allow them to have the same privilege. And I respect a big shout out to Afro B in the building. Says it's also education. As you just said, people need to research the deepness and the structures put in place by the oppressor, which is the cause of our problem till this day. And I think for a lot of people, even a statement like that could go over people's head, because it's also based on your own research. It's also based on your own exposure. Big shout out to Chisara, who says, Chief, please speak on security healthcare. That's a major barrier for many would-be returnees. We're going to get to that. I think the main focus of this conversation, when we talk about what can Africa do for me, a big shout out to Body Products, who said that's the wrong question, but that's the point though, is it? Because I clearly asked Chin, you know, a lot of people ask, what can Africa do for me? But he's actually turned it on his head and he's like, what can you do for Africa? You know, and that's the question he's often asking. But at the same time also, he actually demonstrated that when he went to Nigeria, there were certain things that Nigeria provided for him, which was value. What can Africa, and that's what Africa did for him, you know?
Self-worth, who you are as a person,
reminding him who you are.
Spirituality,
right,
your spirituality, who you are, why you exist.
Yes.
There's a power that is on the continent that does not exist anywhere else. I know that for some people, they're blessed with being in very tight-knit Black communities within the UK or America. Let me tell you, there's nothing like being and set foot your two legs on this place. It is not ideal. Honestly, I could live in New York or in London, and I know I could be earning 7 figures easy right now. I do not earn 6 figures today. Do you understand? That's a decision, but I think for my sanity and for my peace of mind, there's certain things I've decided that are non-negotiables for me. Waking up in the morning and not having to think about what I look like and who I am, right? That to me does not have a price. When I walk down the street and carry myself, that's not because I'm confident, it's because I know who I am. And that power is something, it's free. It's not like anybody is holding it. There's not any gatekeeper. It is here. The land is here. And, you know, that spirituality, honestly, people always ask, what can it do for me? What can you do for it? It's not a transaction. It's not a birthright. It's not something that people should stop. If you want to do it, do it. I think the fear is warranted. I understand it. Some of our parents' generation have poisoned the minds of their children and made them believe that the continent is not for them.
It's somewhere you escaped from. So why would you go back?
Fuck that. Escape from the country that imprisons you, the country that doesn't value you as a person, the countries that do not see you as equal.
Now,
that's where you escape from.
That goes to me and you, who are 6 hours away from the motherland. Now, let's talk on, like you spoke about our brother, Mr. Duncan, Haitian American. Let's talk on the Brazilians, you know, the Yoruba people in Brazil. Let's talk about our brothers in the Caribbean. Let's talk about those who are also, you know, born by Caribbeans, by here in the UK or across Australia. How do we translate that message of people coming back home? Because not everybody can come back home. Is that a conversation to be had, Chin?
Not everybody can come back home, but I think, and not everybody has to come back home.
Let's go.
I'm not calling everybody to come home. I'm saying if it's your calling, come home. Mm-hmm. If you're questioning it, if you're scared, maybe then it's not for you. And let me be honest with you. I tell you this, Lagos is not for everybody. Nigeria is not for everybody. Africa is not for everybody. Not everybody has the backbone. Not everybody has the skin to handle it, because it can break you, right? If you don't have the mindset, if you don't have the tools. And by the way, you don't have to have family back home to go home. I know people that have moved back here and they have nothing, but they've come because they've been called. Their spirits have been called. If you feel that, come. But in terms of your question with regards to the other diaspora, the Caribbean, South America, Australia, where you went recently. Australia is so far, but we are there. bridges. We need to build those bridges.
Yes,
With
sir.
those bridges, at the first part is education. And what I always try and help people understand is that there's two sides to the bridge. You don't build the bridge on one side and reach the other side, then you now go and look for the person that is going to help you open the door. We have to build the bridge from both sides. Both sides, we have bridge builders on both sides. People who have taken it upon themselves to make music that connects us, to create platforms that connect us, to have conversations that educate people about we are all Black. By the way, we're all Black, but we're all, and you remember this from the conversation we had, all our stories are different. All our experiences are different. And that's fine. They're so different. Some of them are as different as black and white stories. Just because you don't understand it and because you didn't live my story doesn't mean we're not the same. But it is the onus is on you to be empathetic and understanding that our brothers and sisters have all been through shit. Different types of shit. They may smell different. They may look different. But we've all been through hell and we still are going through hell. Because your shit don't stink like mine doesn't mean that we've been through different experiences or we're any different as Black people. In Brazil, as you know, my father's the ambassador in Brazil. I spent the last 3 years discovering and spending time understanding the culture, opening up, and I've met some amazing people on that side who are doing the same thing. I have a friend who's been coming to Nigeria every 2-3 years. She goes to Oshobo, she discovers herself, she goes back and educates her people about it.
Right.
Caribbean, Mr. Trinidad. You went to Trinidad before me. You met up with Mandela.
Yeah.
I have since been back twice. I have a mission in Trinidad and the Caribbean because honestly, I work in the music industry. If we connected the continent, South America and the Caribbean, do you know that the West would not exist? Like, we don't need that.
Related to what Afro just said, bridges through
Afrobeat,
education
we
and
were in
entertainment.
Trinidad together. We were in Trinidad together.
Absolutely.
And I tweeted it and I said, I wish more artists were like Afro who would go out there and jump on every stage so that people knew that we are on the mother and we see you. If you knew how uneducated the people in the Caribbean about who we are, or what, I have a very good friend, one of the biggest promoters in Trinidad, who was confused when he saw us and our crew. And one of them said she plays polo. He says, what? You people actually ride horses in Lagos? Wait, this is a Black guy. No. Hey, he's my brother. But I understand that it's not his fault. He doesn't understand. Now, let me tell you something. He said, wait, so you guys, one of our friends had, he likes taller women, Amazonian kind. He said, bro, it was confusing him. He couldn't understand what a short guy like that would be doing with such a big man. Then he made it make sense to himself, saying he's used to dealing with giraffes and big animals, wild animals, so he must be.
Right.
And everyone was like, oh my God. I said, see, the funny thing is when a white person says that, we would say it's racist. This is another brother who's been educated to not know any better. So he spent the whole week with us and just kept asking questions. And if you don't understand, ask questions. The internet is there. Google is your friend. If you don't want to and you want to know more, read. If you don't read, ask a friend like Eddie. There's so many of us that are willing to educate from a place of no judgment. Not all of us know the history of our African kings and queens because we grew up in countries where Black history was not part of the history books. And speaking of history, in Lagos, in Nigeria, history was white history. We were taught history of our colonial master. History does not exist, by the way, in the curriculum today. It's been taken out by Nigerians. So one of my friends, you know him, Temer, he spent the last 8 years creating comics called Panoramic Comics that educates the young generation about our African history. So Queen Amina, different stories that he's used through comics, visual arts, that he's had those comics integrated into the curriculum. We are responsible for educating each other. I think, one thing that we must stop doing is the whole cancel culture because somebody says or is not as clued up or as woke as you. We must also start to remember that some of us have been enslaved far too long by no choice of ours. We've been programmed, we've been taught. Some of us think the same way as the racist people because we don't know any better.
Yes.
Honestly, I was lucky. And when I say I was lucky, growing up around white people who I was allowed to exist among, right? Or I learned to survive among, and to still come out on the other side with a strong self and identity. I have friends who did not come out the other side of white private schools knowing themselves. They're scattered in their heads. They don't know, they don't want to come back. They're scared of us. They're scared of their country because that's what they've been told. Do you think that it's only white people who thought that we lived in mud huts?
What? So here's the thing, right, Chin? So here's the part, right? What the things you just said has a lot to do with speaking on the question of accountability and responsibility, right?
Yep.
A lot of people assume because today I've now gone to Africa for the first time, I've discovered things everybody should know. Or because today I've now understood a lot more about what blackness means, everybody should know. Because I've gone to America and I've learned about the African-American history or the conversation in the Caribbean, suddenly everybody should know. How
Eddie,
do we
let me
pace
embarrass
ourselves?
myself. I'm gonna just jump in. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let me embarrass myself. Do you remember when I told you I went to, where was that place I just went to? I went to Uganda.
And
no, tell the
so,
story, right? I'm someone who's lived in Nigeria 12 years. I've been on the continent, been to Senegal, been to Ghana, Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, South Africa, Uganda, Zambia, Kigali, Rwanda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and it keeps going on, right? But
you
ask my boy Eddie.
Okay. So, Chin, we were in Lagos, guys. So just we're in context. We were in Lagos, drinking Chapman as I do at Echo Hotel, and we're talking. Chin's talking about journeys and where he's come from and stuff. And he said he was making his way. I'm not sure what country he was in. That's not even irrelevant. I just come
back from East Africa. I just come back from South Africa.
Going to Nigeria.
I just come back from to Nigeria, and I had stopped on the way back on a.
We stopped in Libreville. Right? He stopped in Libreville, which is the capital city of a country. And of course, he actually asked the people that were there, I think the air hostesses where they were
going.
Right. Where is Libreville? They also, actually, not the air hostesses, some people say Congo, right? And
not even just Congo. They didn't know where Libreville was, and they were guessing, right?
But Chin says to me, oh, I was in Congo. I said, oh, Chin, how can you go to Congo and not tell me? He said, no, like, I was in Congo. Like, we was passing through, this is what happened. And I said, where did you go? He said, Libreville. And my head dropped. Because I know this is one of my closest friends who says they were going through Libreville, but Libreville is Gabon. So me and Chin go back and forth about the fact because no, like they had nobody had an idea, the people he was talking to, that they definitely weren't going through Congo, right? So me and Chin going back, he now says, no, this is exactly what it was. That we went online, long story short, to find out that it definitely was not Congo. But the point was, at that very moment in time, the reason why we laughed about it, because actually to come to, and I said to him, I said, listen, not everything is Nigeria. This is what me and him go back and forth on. But we came to understand that there is so much to learn. There is so much to learn about the continent and our blackness and our history that not one person is better than the other. We all have so much to exchange. And I'm glad you brought that up, Chin, because it becomes more self-serving when we think that we know better about our continent or our history, when actually we are supposed to teach each other.
Bro, I will always find somebody that knows more than you about where you come from. Do you understand? And I think that we have to take that responsibility of educating the next generation so we're not having these conversations, right? Unfortunately, not all of us, I'm pretty fucking educated, but I don't know every capital city in Africa. I'm sorry, I just don't. And unless I've been there, I don't know. Is it my fault? Should I know better? Should I be studying the world, the Africa map? Maybe. I'll get to it. But like, I'm just trying to point out that like, we all don't have all the answers. And like I said, if if the diaspora exists of every country in Africa, and let's just say for argument's sake, for each country has one story, their experience of leaving the continent to get to where they are. That's a lot of stories.
It's a lot.
But we now know that every single diaspora, their story and their journey out of their country to how they arrived there is a different story. These stories, and this is honestly, like, I think the most profound thing that I learned over the last 2 years because of Alex and because of Eddie and friends like Eddie, and I continue to learn from them, is that all our Black stories are so different, but that's the beauty in who we are.
Yes, sir.
Be more empathetic and be more understanding that they are, and you will learn much quicker. I think we're lucky we have the internet, we have social media, we can do things like this. We don't have to be, I'm still one of those old school guys that I need to travel to experience it. I need to go to these places to experience it. Once you do, there's nothing, it's not like online. Do you understand? It's nothing like FaceTime. It's being there on the ground, the energy. There's nothing that can express it. And I will say to anybody and all of you that are asking, I want to move home, I want to go this, just travel there first. Go and explore a little bit. I'll tell you this, there's people go to different parts. They're so different. Like, there's people that have been back in Lagos 10 years and they've never left Nigeria. They've only gone to London and to America.
And then back to Lagos. So, Chin, hold on. Chin, hold on. First of all, Instagram owes us some time, so we're definitely going to go past 7 o'clock. That one is a fact.
Well, we know we cut off after 20 minutes, so we definitely
that one is a fact. We're definitely going to go past that time. And I just want to shout a few people. Starboy K, my cousin, I see you, Christian.
Which Starboy? Whiskey?
Starboy. He's the original. He's the original Starboy. He's been going back and forth in Mombasa for a long time now. Even probably before I was going back to the motherland. Brianna, I see you. Big shout out to Val Hibbert, always consistently with us. Exotic Rahima, who's going back home as well.
I think she said she's going home in July. She said she was
going back to Zimbabwe, I believe.
Yeah, to Zim.
So, yeah, man. So good luck with that. Now, Chin, we speak on that accountability. We speak on education. Let's start talking solutions as much as we can, because one of the reasons why I love these conversations is because of the homework we can set people. Yeah, and we can constantly, from our point of view, what we can constantly do. I want to get to a stage where I will eventually start getting people on who will start recommending books. Big shout out to my boy Aubrey, one of my close friends. We've been talking a lot on just what can we do as individuals, right?
What I'm going to do, Eddie, sorry, over the weekend, remind me, I'm going to go into my dad's library. So that's the other thing. My dad reads too much, right?
Yes.
There's at least 40 books on the history of
beautiful.
This. I will share them all with you.
Beautiful. That would be so good. Like, that's something that we should definitely start doing, because even for myself, as much as I think I read, I don't read enough and stuff. Big shout out to brothers like Akala, who always recommends books to read, and that we need to start sharing those things. But apart from that, you said something very, very, very important, that you don't do this for yourself, or you don't do this for me who's watching, but more for our children, my children, your children, then their children moving forward. How do we set that as homework moving forward now in our purpose and everything we apply ourselves? Where do we begin?
It's interesting you say that. I'm looking for notes I've made. Obviously, you know, tomorrow is supposed to be Blackout Tuesday.
Yes.
Industry blackout.
Yes.
A lot of people have been asking themselves, so what do we do? You know, is it just we just don't go to work? What's actually interesting is that it's kickstarted a lot of conversations in small groups. I feel like we all have different roles to play when it comes to revolution. What's going on in America right now is so beautiful because people have discovered their power.
Okay.
There's a lot to take from that. I think a lot of people keep saying, we can't just be on the streets. We need to strategize. My nigga, the guy on the street, is not his job to strategize. That's why you have general, lieutenant, colonel, this is foot soldier. Everybody has a role. The person who's supposed to be strategizing, is probably not on the street.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who've now, within our space, music industry, have decided to come together and have conversations. It's very important. Because, and I'm just going to share with you what I will share tomorrow.
Talk to me.
We all have different roles. We're all individuals. But the same way you start a company and you have core values and you clarify your mission. If we are all Black brothers and sisters, we should be able to say, here are the core principles that we all agree on. And we can't have 10 or 10, just basic principles. So in whatever you're doing, whether it is when you're on stage, whether it is whenever you're having conversations, or whether you're creating platforms, whatever you do, the purpose and like you live through life, make sure that you're covering those core principles. And it may not all be at the same time. Educate, empower, protect the culture. Those three to me are, and when I say empower, economic empowerment, job opportunity, those things are, if you go into a role within the white system, let's not kid ourselves. We are all part of a system that is not ours. Even us living here in Nigeria. Why do I say that? You think our leaders don't answer to somebody? When they need money, where do they borrow money from? When we speak out, who kills us? In your country, who places the president there? In other countries, when they decide Uncle Bob in Zimbabwe, when they say we don't want any more, who kills us? So the system we all work in, or we all exist in, is one, not ours. So if you want to change it over a period of time so that the next generation, our children, those who come after us, do not have to suffer the same conditions that we or our predecessors have, we must educate each other and we must continue to empower each other. You can work for an organization which is white, but it is not yours. It's not your father's. You didn't build it, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be there. Go there and make sure that while you're there, your mission is to make sure you empower your own people. Whether it means you hire your own people. By the way, white people do this all the time. Watch them. They hire their own people. They make sure they create opportunity for their own people. They educate their own people.
Listening.
Everyone keeps saying education. We have power. We have influence. You don't have to be the boss to be able to move us forward. There's an interesting comparison that keeps coming up. The plantation, right?
Yeah.
So if one of us is lucky enough to become a house nigger, right? And every $100 that you generate for your master, just take $5 and put it to the side and give your people. After 20 times, $100 is sitting with your people. And you might have just brought in one. We need to just continue to increment, to bring our people up. Watch the Chinese people. Watch the Indian people. Watch Jewish people.
Hold on one second, Che, because somewhere in the digital world they tried it again.
No. Someone tried to phone me. Sorry, that's what happened.
Them two, we're putting them on the same list.
So what? I was just saying, right? Watch Indian people. Watch Chinese people.
Yes.
Watch Jewish people.
Yes.
There's a principle called the spider web theorem. Go and study it.
We're listening to
the Jews and the Indians.
Theorem.
The Jews and the Indians are fucking phenomenal at it. Every penny that comes into their community does not leave. If you make money as a cab driver in New York, you spend your money on an Indian laundrette or an Indian travel agent or an Indian restaurant. The Chinese too. The Jews do it too. They take money in and it stays in their community. How many people here have that
conversation on that, Chin? What is it with a conversation where people say that? And a big shout out to my sister Amma for INFORAFRICA, who came up with the concept of getting Africa in formation, which is what you're talking about right now. And that's part of the campaign. Everybody doing their part to come together in formation, like a tactic or formation of football game. But I want to say this: when you're talking about the spider web theory, right? What is it when black people now say, yeah, we want to do that, but our people do not have great quality in the work they produce. I wanted to touch on that because that seems to be the conversation that circulates, that we're not, I want to go to the black hair salon, but they don't
You see,
treat us.
I made it very
I wanted
important
to
that
touch
I
on that
wore.
because this is
Wait,
something
I
that is
made
going
it very
around.
important. You see this. You see this,
Yes,
right?
sir.
This is called waffles and cream. It's made in Lagos, right? Not everything. You think when Mercedes started, there were Mercedes of today.
Talk to us, Chin. We're listening to you right now. Talk to us.
You have to have faith in your own people. Do you think when Tata in India started, their cars were as good as Toyota? No. But the Indian people said, we're behind you. You are one of us. We're fucking terrible at this as black people. We love to talk about it. I'm behind you. I support you. I support you. My nigga, you don't. Stop talking shit. And you don't have to, but learn to. Learn to support your own. It can only benefit your own.
Regardless.
And regardless. And unfortunately, it's not. I don't blame you. It's not your fault. You've been programmed to. You heard me talk about earlier, there's people that have lived in Nigeria their whole lives. They've only been to London and been to DC. Why? Because your masters have programmed you to believe that when you make money, carry it back to my country. Why do you think people can steal money from the continent? The first place they can go and hide it is to buy a 20 million pound house in London. Nobody makes noise. Because the money is coming back to their economy. Of course, they're going to let you bring it in. They've programmed you to believe that the promised land is there. How many Africans invest in Africa? They make money. How many of them invest in Africa? Go and invest in other African countries. It is not, again, I keep saying it's not our fault. We've been programmed that way, but we must force ourselves to unlearn and learn that we must put ourselves first. I am a man of the people. I am a humanitarian. I believe that we are all equal. But you know what? This is a game and a race. And unfortunately, everybody else who's a humanitarian is picking their own team first. We must pick our own team first. Always. It doesn't mean that you don't like them.
Terry Kwasi, a Ghanaian who moved back from Holland, was part of the Pan-African program as well in Accra, Ghana. And everything you're talking about, I keep thinking about him every time he comes up. That's somebody who took a system, he understood, he learned the financial system, and he decided he's going to invest everything back home. He's going to build a system back home, regardless of, the obstacles that he faced. He decided to plow through, and it comes down to patience. I said it once on my page, Chin. I said that if you see an issue back home, that's not for you to just point out, but that's actually God's way of telling you that's your issue to resolve. If
it's
you
an
can
opportunity.
talk about it, if you can identify it,
it's a problem to solve, right? It's a problem to solve. We're quick to, and look, let me not kid myself. I'm no saint, but let me tell you something. Let's not take this as gold. When I say we must support our own, we must get behind each other. It does not mean that you're obliged to get behind every black business,
yes, sir.
Every black person. Because let me tell you, the truth is, there's some of us that do not deserve to be supported. And because their intentions are not in line with what we're talking about now. And anybody who's semi-smart on this will know will know where the sub is. But like, we don't have to support you just because you're black. If I don't feel your intentions and I don't feel that you mean well for my people, I don't have to support you. There's people that will take advantage of this narrative that I'm saying, which is we have to support each other. So they will create something and everybody get behind you and then watch it. Watch them. They will stumble, they will fall because it's not, God won't have it any other way. So when it suddenly opens and everybody sees, shit, see, they didn't mean well for me. Someone asked the question, how do we unlearn?
Yes.
I genuinely think that unlearn, and there are some books, but I'm a student of the mind. I believe, I'm a big believer in learning from people. I grew up reading a lot. I studied law. There's a period of my life where I stopped reading. That's a different story, but people became my books. unfortunately, a lot of us don't have the grandparents. You know, grandparents and storytellers, one of the best
Oh
sources
man.
of knowledge.
Oh man. God bless my
But you will
grandparents. I
find
wouldn't
that
lose them
there's
enough.
people that we can go to learn from. But honestly, the first step of unlearning begins in here. It starts with you. Unlearning what you've been taught, it begins with your intentions and begins with finding yourself as a
Yes, sir.
black person.
Yes,
When
sir.
you find yourself, follow. You know, when they say with religion or anything else, it all begins with God is love. And then you take from that what you feel and what you know will lead from that. Once you find yourself, once you find your core, your spirituality, and who you are, everything else will follow. You can read many books, but if your core is not grounded, if you do not want it, no one can teach you it.
Oh
There's
man, you know
habits,
what, bro?
there's habits that we've been
If you
taught that
don't
we
want
don't.
to, no one can teach you it. And a big shout out to my boy Aubrey, who's on this call. And I'm so glad because we've been having our conversations about this and just a position of how do we move forward? How do we learn? How do we get everybody on board? What about, let's talk about leaders and followers, right? So like, and those who want to do something but can't quite pin down on exactly what they need to do. Me and my boy have been talking a lot about this, and you're touching on, in order for you to start, you have to start from the heart. How do you know when you're doing something? This is not to say you have the answer to this, Chin, but this is from your opinion, from someone who I think has aligned themselves with their purpose and is running with it. How do you know when you are doing something that's tangible, something that actually feels right for you and your people, and actually feel like, you're part of the solution and not the problem?
When you're raised by good people, or when you're a good person, in your heart, right? You're lucky and you kind of have this intuition. You follow your path, your purpose, you follow your inner self. It's not about validation, but there are reminders that what you're doing is right. Bro, honestly, it's never been about numbers, although you have to play the game and show them what they want. But in what I do, the moments where you get people remind you, you get an email, or you get a phone call,
Take your time, Chin. Take your
or you
time.
meet someone who tells you how whatever you've done. Fuck's sake!
It's okay. It's okay. You
No,
meet someone.
so
You meet someone who
so
reminds
you
you
meet
whatever
someone
you've done.
who reminds you that whatever you've been doing or whatever you do has impacted their lives positively. And again, it's not about validation, but it's always a nice reminder when you're on a path that, when you're driving on a long road, countryside road, no signs, you're like, fuck, am I lost? Then you just see one sign that says 100 miles. Oh, fuck, okay, I'm going in the right direction.
Yeah. I'm with you. I
That's
get that completely. I get that.
People will remind you. And honestly, it's one of the most humbling and gratifying moments when someone lets you know that you've touched their life. I have 2 kids who work for me who came to me and were like, we really want to learn. Da, 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 da. This was, okay, give you an internship, 2 months. Ono has been with me for now, almost 3 years, right? This guy knows more about Giddy Fest than I do. This guy quoted interviews that I had done. Fuck, I don't even remember them. He knew details about my life and like things that people don't know. But because our paths were aligned, but clearly what I was doing had an impact on him, inspired him, motivated him. he has grown leaps and bounds. And I was like, you know, he's a reminder of the work I do, right? Then you're at concerts or festivals and you see the look on people's faces. Look, concert images, I know you guys look at them online, but there's nothing like, and I think from a Afrobeat can probably attest to this, any promoter, when you see people's faces, pure joy, happiness that they feel from being connected by music fuels you even more. Doing sessions like we did, the My Giddy, the screening, and those conversations, and hearing people who are then encouraged to come home, who are reminded that they're not alone, that their experiences are not unique. Every step you take, there's always something. You may not see it, and you might, but I think God wants you to see them. Because, as I said to you, there's moments when you want to quit. So you turn to your trusted friends, they remind you. Sometimes your trusted friends aren't there, but then that sign pops up again. You're like, fuck, yes, I'm going the right way. Because I'll tell you this, bro. I see Lanrays on this call. I see Wale's on this call. Yo, if it was about money, my nigga, we would have stopped a long time ago. Because there was other ways to make money. And unfortunately, like, no, what am I talking about? Unfortunately, fortunately, for guys like us, it's culture before coin, always. You put your people before, and maybe that's because I come from a place of privilege where I don't have to worry about a roof in front of my head. But like I said to you, that with that privilege comes huge responsibility.
Oof.
I am aware
say
of
that again. Say that again, bro, because that doesn't just relate to someone like you. It relates to so many people who are in a better position for those they want to serve. So say that again. Take your time.
It's something I truly believe. I feel that some of us are lucky, some of us are born lucky, some of us have opportunities that others don't. But with that privilege comes huge responsibility. Being able to put the culture before coin. I know not everybody has that opportunity. Like, if you have to feed your family and you have to put a roof over your head, that's not a luxury that everybody has. But those of us who have that luxury, you then have an obligation and a responsibility to put the people in the culture first. Because if it doesn't work, you know you at least have a roof over your head. I always used to tell people this. So what people forget, and it's actually sad that like music is where it's got into is so driven by money and capitalism. But you know, the arts was always a luxury.
Yeah.
Whether you were Mozart, whether you were Michelangelo, it was a luxury because there was no money in it. You were lucky you had a family that gave you a loft you could live in. So you just made music all day, or you painted on a wall. And then in death, your art became valuable. It's a luxury. But it's a luxury that some of us are blessed to have. And therefore, and I think some take for granted the power of the stories we tell through music. Wale and I had a conversation yesterday about people in the music industry. There's so many more Black people in the music industry than there were 10 years ago. None of us are at the top, but does not take away from the power that we have, because ultimately we have control over the narratives, over the stories. We're the storytellers. The music you hear, the music that changes the world, you're the ones that are the curators of that culture. We're the ambassadors, we're those, and you don't have to be at the top to control that. And I keep trying to explain to our people in music is you don't have to be at the top to make a change. You don't have to be the boss or the head of a department to make that change. We all have that power to make a change, whether it's through the stories that we tell or whether it's through the education, not just our people, by the way. We had this other conversation, also educating people who do not look like us.
Facts. So
you assume that they're empathetic and feel our pain, but actually some of them don't. Yeah.
before you go there, educating people who don't look at us, who don't come from where we come from. You know, yo, bro, as you're talking, you're touching so many people at the same time. I love the fact that this conversation is not about me, guys, which is why I always make sure my guests take their time and speak, because otherwise I'll be very selfish in allowing myself to hear them when they're talking to me on the phone away from the live. But when it comes to the live, I now speak more than they do. Big shout out to Afrobeat, because, you know, as we have musicians here, Suspect, who's also here, you know, a big UK artist. He's talking about culture before Quen. He's readily listening. A big shout out to Roa Masha, who obviously is part of Trace Africa, Trace Nigeria. So we have a lot of people in the music business, but this is not just, you know, relative to the music business. This is relative to everybody. That's why I had to make sure that Chin repeated the notion of, listen, because we're in a privileged position, we have an obligation. Yeah, because we have been given the luxury to be able to do this. So for me, which is why, you know, I've been a part of this INFORAFRICA campaign, because it came from the fact that I sat down, Chin, for 2 weeks, and I was complaining about everything to do with the lockdown.
Mate, we talked about, remember we had that call at the first time. Chin, what the fuck do I do? I don't feel like I can do anything. And what did I tell you? I was like, bro, you have a platform.
There you go.
Educate people, talk to people. And it doesn't matter how many people tune in. It can be 10 people, 5 people.
And I realized, you know, one thing I realized that the things you're talking about, so many people can't, that's even a blessing for you to complain about the things you're complaining about. You know, and it's always about, you know, you have to be remembered for what you stood for what you wanted to be known for, not for the likes and comments. And the impact that we've seen so far of everyone I'm speaking to has been so amazing. So I'm wary of time. So let's look at the last 10 minutes of our conversation, Chin, yeah? This is what I want. I want people to go away and be able to reference some of the things you've said here, but not only just that, be also able to go and research on those things and be able to talk to their people, right? Very, very important, because now we've identified who the person you are. From your point of view, we've identified the things that you've seen that you think could be better in our community and as a people. We've also identified some of the solutions we should go forward. But just as I'm doing for this campaign, it's not just about COVID-19. It's supposed to be based around COVID-19, but use that same influence to deal with education in Africa, anti-xenophobia in Africa. So what I'm asking you now is, in the last 10 minutes, as we're now wrapping up, is how does this outlast Blackout Tuesday? How does it outlast a protest? How does it outlast the conversation that we're going to have as friends for the next 2 weeks? How do we continue the knock-on effect so we're always ready? And I'll tell you why. I spoke to my good brother Carla, who I would love to get on a conversation at one time, but he's really working behind the scenes. He asked me a question. He said, Eddie, and I shared this with my boy Aubrey and a few other people. He said, Eddie, how many black families do you think we have in this world who have a mission statement? Meaning, they all sit down and they say, for the next 3 to 4 generations, as a family, where do we want our families to be? And I said, I don't know. He said, 1.2 billion people on the continent. We're not saying everybody should, or everyone has the luxury to have that conversation. But if 1% do you not think that will make a difference? I said, yes. So I put that in you when I say this, and I asked you, Chin, how do we continue this conversation going? And how do we continue our actions? How do conversation turn into actions and move forward? Let's go.
So,
oh, please, before you answer, Suspect wants to know, what does Blackout Tuesday mean? Just 15 seconds on that, just so he's on par with it, and then we move forward.
So I think Blackout Tuesday was started by 2 ladies. I don't know them. I need to check. You can check on Alex Twin's page. He just posted about it. Some people think, oh, it's only 1 day. What does that do? No, it's a step. It's one step that allows us to take a step back and engage with the Black community within the music industry. As I said to you earlier, we all exist in a system that is not ours. Our father did not build any of the record labels or any of the music companies. A lot of the subs exist as subsidiaries of the larger ones, right? But a lot of our peers have existed and have experienced racism within their organizations. It is a moment to, and I'm sitting on 2 calls tomorrow, one from 5 to 7, one from 7 to 9, of peers on the continent, in the UK, in the US, where we're asking, and that's the question I'm asking, which is, and I said this earlier, What is it that aligns us? We don't all have to be friends. We don't all have to hold hands and sing Kumbaya. But if we can agree that there is certain core principles that we know is going to advance our people, let us agree on those. I said to you earlier, we have the power to control the narrative and tell our stories. Economic empowerment, which is economic empowerment and creating opportunity. There's education. And then there's one I didn't mention earlier, you just mentioned it, which was accountability. We must hold each other accountable. Eddie and I, we do this all the time, where we see our peers who are doing things that don't look like they're going to benefit our people. We call it out. We need to stop being scared of the bill, the check, who we work for. Oh my God, and by the way, again, another privilege I have. I've never had to, I've worked for people, but when I've been in music, I've always worked for myself. So I have answered to people. I have investors. They're just not white. But I understand that I can't say too much. I shouldn't, because I work. We also tied to confidentiality agreements. But
Yes,
that does not mean that we cannot say, oh, wait, I forgot the other one. Protect the culture. Curators of the culture, culture brokers, curators of the culture. That's part of the narrative. If we can all agree on principles that we say in our daily lives and in our purpose, we are going to implement, we're going to be cognizant of these pillars.
Yes.
Just like you were setting up a company. You just talked about how many families have mission statements. Pretty sure mine does. And my dad wants to do a document. My grandfather was an educator, was a minister of education in Nigeria for 2 terms. My father's just been ambassador, but what we have in common throughout was agriculture. We failed in agriculture for 50 years, but with a mission to feed our own people.
You failed in agriculture for 50 years, but with a mission
to feed our people. Don't forget, Nigeria is a net importer. Everything we eat is imported out from outside.
Yes, sir. Yes,
and
sir.
why I say we failed is because technically I should be rich, wealthy, like Cargill. But and I used to say that my father was mad, and I used to say that my grandfather was mad, and now I've followed them and joined them. I'm mad too. But there's a clear mission. Everybody has to have a mission in life.
Yes, sir.
Everybody needs clarity with their purpose. And by the way, don't feel pressured. Don't feel like you need to go away and come back tomorrow and know my purpose. No, some people know their purpose from birth. Some people figure it out at 15, some at 30, some never do. And what I believe is your purpose is forever changing. I'm one of those believers in life is fluid. As I said to you, this life is not ours. Today, God can call you to do something. Tomorrow, he can call you to do something else. Do not be just encouraged that, man, I don't know my purpose. It's fine. But open your mind to discovering your purpose.
Open your mind.
Not everybody's purpose is to save our people. Not everybody's purpose is to save the world. But just don't exist. And if your purpose is to uplift Africa, uplift Black people, is to ensure that we are better tomorrow, ensure that our children do not live in the same conditions we live in today, then join the mission. And like, I think there's no doubt that we'll sit on a call tomorrow and maybe half the people on the call will not believe or will not be aligned with what we think we need to move it forward, but that's okay. Those of us who agree to those should be held accountable to being in roles of influence and power and saying, you must educate your people. You must create opportunities for your people. You must educate your people. You must make sure that when our culture is monetized and turned into this, that it is done with respect and it is done with authenticity. It's not a
Man,
lot to ask.
bro, you know you're gonna be coming back because questions like why is everything imported? That's all part two. Africa shouldn't even be importing food. It hurts when we have good soil. That's also part two.
We can't have that
Um,
conversation online
wait,
because you may
experiences and
never hear from me
education.
again.
Wait, experiences and education helps you discover your purpose. Big shout out to Afrobeat on that too. Chin, the last 3 minutes of this, I wanted to explain quickly some of the things you're up to. Yeah, just a brief outline of some of the things you're up to and how may people be able to learn from that or get involved in that. More people want to know. Not everything you're up to. Some of the things that we're up to that may be relevant to connect with people. People can learn from, people can see.
So
like
I just turned 35.
Hey, small boy.
I know. Entering a really new chapter in my life. I've just made some really different decisions that people don't know me for. But I truly believe that the next chapter for me will give me the resources to do much more for my people. The festival is there. Giddy Fest is still there. It will continue to grow. A lot of the projects that I've kind of been consulting or being part of in this new chapter there's a new chapter. We
don't need to know the details. That's for sure.
No. But
The,
I think follow me on Twitter.
The project that we can hold on
to. Follow Giddy Fest at Giddy Fest. It's there. It's everywhere. That's my blood, my soul, my heart. It's all there. Whether I'm there or not, it will be there. Hopefully forever. But follow me on Twitter at chin_I am. Family-wise, again, like I mentioned earlier, food. My mother owns a food business, spices. My father's in agriculture. And agriculture is something that's just forever passionate about me because I think...
This is not the first time we've heard this. Eugene came on. You know very well about what Eugene gets up to. Eugene came on to speak about agriculture too.
Right. Eugene, my man Eugene. Oh, fuck. You know, honestly, Eugene is an inspiration. He really is. And that's someone who's made something of coming back to the continent and has not had to leave. It doesn't have to come and live here, but he has come back to the continent and has built on the continent and has empowered his people on the continent, has educated his people. Do you see? There's a common thread. It doesn't ask for much to figure out. I'm a simple guy, but like, I think when you see what other people do, you can quickly align with them, whether you know them or not. There's people you see from afar, and you exactly. So my thing is just to continue doing God's work.
Yes, sir.
To continue to hopefully give guidance. Honestly, like I said, I'm 35. There's a whole younger generation of people coming up in this. And my thing is, anyone who's got questions, email me, tweet me, whatever, call me, DM me, because we have a responsibility to make sure they don't make the same mistakes we made.
Stop it at that, bro. Bro, we have a responsibility to make sure they don't make the same mistake. Instagram has bowed down to us. We have 1.5 minutes left. We love it. This is perfect conversation will continue. Can you imagine we added an hour on top of our intended hour, which is beautiful.
Eddie, I love you for what you're doing. This is great. Thank you for the opportunity to share. And for everybody that's watching, I appreciate all your comments. Come home.
Come home. And on that note,
oh, and if you like this, wait, at Waffles and Cream, wait, at Waffles. I'm just gonna give a shameless plug. My boys, Jomi has been doing this for the last 7 years.
You have 10 seconds.
Homemade, Lagos made, Nigerian made, pretty fucking dope. Check it out. Love you guys.
See you guys tomorrow, guys. More conversation. Chin will be back, and we're gonna leave it off on this. Whenever Instagram wants to cut us, it can cut us on Joanna. We will be leaving this conversation happy. Info Africa, guys. Check the conversations.
Joanna,
Make sure,
Jo.
make sure you
Yo,
take the conversation,
how
guys.
is this
Comedy
song
hour coming
still
on.
like top 10? Yo, the way they're playing this thing in Trinidad, bruh. Joanna,
Tim, say bye, say bye.
drug bow.